This is an open letter to my capitalist friends. It's a continuation of my first letter regarding communism and how is it that the capitalists are forcing communism on certain part of the world to the natives. This is the second video that I'm making because I feel it's very important, and I need to I draw up the I drew up the theoretical aspect of the matter in my first video. I like to now give some examples of that, how communism is not natural, but it's enforced. It's a forced system. It's a system that is usually forced from the competitors, from the adversaries to the system from outside. So normally communism is not something that the system wants to have. It's a system. Communism is something that it's forced upon any system, and you could go as far back as whenever you like, when you had citadels and you had people living inside citadels, inside small cities with walls surrounding the city to prevent attacks, to hinder attacks from the enemy or competitors or whatever during the times of war. From that time, you can say that when a city was attacked by outsiders, by enemies, by competitors, whatever, by adversaries, it was attacked, the citadel would close its gates and become a closed community. So the enemies outside the gate, the people are inside, and the enemy surrounds the city, basically blockades the city, and there will be no choice there will be no replenishment of the necessities of life for the people inside the city. So what the people inside the city will do? What is their only choice? Their only choice is that the ruler, be it a person or a government or a group of people, basically start implementing communist mechanisms. We are talking about 5,000 years ago. Mechanisms are the same: rationing of the resources in order to prolong the time that they can withhold, so they don't have to open the gates and let the enemy in. So there is rationing of resources. On the other hand, there is the administration, the government takes over production of goods and services because there is no more profits to be made. Here's the thing about communism: it starts with rationing of the resources. It starts with distribution. First, communism takes over distribution because there is not enough things to go around, enough goods to go around and give anybody as much as they want. So they become rationing of the resources is the first step that every government has to take. This is the first lever in a communist system, is the rationing of resources, because there is not enough of it to go around and to give everybody as much as they want. So you ration it. You give everybody equal portions to have everybody benefit from just a little at least. Then it becomes the step of the government taking over production, and that's usually the capitalists, the producers, really don't mind at that point for the government to take over production as well, because they're not making any profits. because there is price controls by the government, rationing by the government, and price controls by the government. So the capitalists are not actually making any profits on their production. There is no competition, there is no profits. Therefore, the manufacturers, the capitalists, who are there for profit, and find out that, since the government has taken over rationing, we can't make profits because we can't increase our prices. Therefore, might as well the government come and take over the production as well. So communism starts with distribution, takes over this government governing institutions taking over the distribution of goods, because there is very little goods available due to external forces such as blockade. And then slowly the government has to take over the production as well, because the producers really don't want to do it, because they're not making any profits. So my point is this: from thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago till now, it's always been the same. When the city is blockaded, when a group of people are blockaded, sanctions, the result is that the system has to go through has to implement communist mechanisms, and it really doesn't need a manifesto. It's like 5,000 years ago they didn't need Marx, Engels, or Lenin, or Stalin to come and tell them how to do rationing, and how to why do rationing, and why eventually the government has to take over the production as well. They didn't need Communist Manifesto to do that. It's just what's done when you're blockaded, and you want to maintain, you want to keep your independence, and you're blockaded. Therefore, you have to implement communist mechanisms. Now, take this. I want to just make sure we are all on the same page. I want to make an example of the British. Now, we all know that the British are not even fully capitalist. The British are still more or less feudalist. We are talking about, a system before capitalism. So the British are quite backward. So nobody can accuse the British of being communist or socialist. They're fucking still, feudalists. They still have kings and lords and whatever the fuck else they have, barons and shit. So nobody can accuse the fucking British of being any kind of communist or having any kind of communist ideas. They slaughter their poor. They send their poor to Australia, and they send their poor to the Americas. They just get rid of their poor. If they can't kill the poor in the wars that the British come up with, if they can't kill them like that, they will export them as colonialists to Africa and Asia and Americas. Anyway, this is the British. They don't do communism. They don't do fair distribution. If you're poor, either they kill you in a war that they create, or they export you to other races' lands to, behave as violently as you want in order to colonize the place on behalf of the pinkskins. Anyway, so the British do not do fair distribution, don't want to do fair distribution of resources or communism. So what happened during, but at the same time, what happened during World War II? During World War II, the German Navy was preventing resources, supplies from reaching the British island. The fucking place is an island, so the Germans, with their well-prepared navy, was blockading the British island, preventing resources from reaching the British island. What happened? If you go and read it up, the history, you will find out that the British, the fucking British that will rather die than do fair distribution amongst their citizens, they actually had to implement rationing. The British had to implement a communist mechanism in order to withstand the blockade. The British became communists during World War II. There was rationing of goods, and there was the commandeering of manufacturing by the government. You know, there was a war effort, and the government commandeers all the manufacturing in order to, you know, put them, in order for the manufacturing to emphasize manufacturing on war production of necessities that of war. So my point is this, that you can say that the British during World War II, but even a few up to a few years after World War II, they were actually communists. The British fucking island, who would rather die than become communists. They still have lords and kings, and they're still feudalists, not even full-fledged capitalists. They're still feudalists, but they had to implement communist levers in order to survive the blockade, in order to resist, in order to keep their independence from the Germans, from the Europeans. So, and again, we go back to even the manufacturers, even the capitalists, the manufacturers in England, you know, gave up their rights, allowed the government to commandeer their production lines because, you know, first of all, it's the law, it's the War Act, and, you know, the country is in war, so they can't actually complain. And second of all, there is no profits to be made by the manufacturers, by the producers, because everything is rationed because of the blockade. So, and rationing means price control. It means, you know, instead of money, they give people tokens, and you say, okay, with this token you come and get some bread, and with this token you come and get some meat. So under such circumstances, producers are not making any profits, so they don't mind handing the keys over to the government, keys of the manufacturing plant to the government, because what's the use? They're not for the foreseeable future, they were not going to make any profits of their endeavor, so might as well have the government run the show. So the same, so you see, this is what I'm saying, that communism is not something that comes through the door with a manifesto. It's some, you know, everybody's having a good time, everybody's having a party, and a group of people burst through the door with a communist manifesto and say, okay, from now on we are communists. It doesn't happen like that. Communism is a series of steps that are taken, usually forced. The system, the groups of people, the nations are forced to take those series of measures, series of steps, if they want to keep some kind of independence for themselves. When they're under pressure, to, you know, be dependent or be colonized or be taken over, when people on this planet are under groups of people, natives to different lands, when they're under pressure and they want to resist and they don't want to be, you know, bent over for the pink skins, they have to implement communist mechanisms just to, you know, keep the shit going if they don't want to submit. So communism is not the reason. If these guys were frank with you, if you, my pink skin friends, my pink skin capitalist friends, if your leaders, if your managers wanted to be frank with you, they would have told you that, oh, it's not, we are not fighting communism, we are fighting the natives, and the natives of different lands, Asia, South America, Africa, we are fighting the natives because we want to colonize these motherfuckers. We want to subdue these motherfuckers. We want to rule over these motherfuckers. We want to influence these motherfuckers of other races. And communism is the way they are trying to endure our pressure. our colonizing pressure, communism is one way, it's a leverage, is a lever in which they implement, communism is a lever they implement, the locals, the natives implement in order to resist our blockade. And why are we blockading them? Because we want to colonize them. We want to subdue them. We want to have influence over them. This is the truth. Even so, we see, even in case of the fucking British, they had to become communist during World War II, a few years after World War II. They had to become communist, implement communist mechanisms in order to survive the attempted colonization by the Germans. You see what I'm saying? So this communism thing is not something that British would do on a normal day. They had to implement it under difficult circumstances. And when you look at the other side of the coin, what is the other side of the other side of the coin is the Chinese. The Chinese, when they were fighting the colonialist British, the colonialist Europeans, and they had that, Chinese revolution, they had to become communist. The government had to take over because they're under, emergency conditions. They're under attack by the Pinkskins, and they're under embargo and blockade by the Pinkskins. So they adapt, and their monarchy was crumbling under the Pinkskin pressure. Result is the Chinese Revolution that took place had very little resources to feed 1 billion people. Therefore, they adapted communist mechanisms. They became a communist country in order to keep the most people alive because they were under pressure, under war footing, in war with the Pinkskins from the other side of the planet, who have come to China to fight the locals, to subdue the locals. So they had to implement communist measures. What happened next? Nixon and Kissinger went in, and not out of the goodness of their hearts. Forget about it. No, it wasn't like that. They needed to separate China from Russia. What is happening right now, that eventually in 2022, that China and Russia have become buddies because, Uncle Sam's managers have decided to, demonize both of them at the same time, which is not a good idea. At that time, Kissinger was very pragmatic. At that time, Kissinger basically said, no, we can't demonize both of them. They have too much power and too many people at their disposal. We can't go and fight a war against both of them at the same time, which apparently Uncle Sam's managers right now think they can fight both of them at the same time. But at that time, Kissinger was pragmatic and said we can't fight them both at the same time, so let's make friends with the Chinese. And therefore, Nixon went in and opened the doors to China. What it means by open the door? It means they took away the blockade. They took away the blockade. The economic blockade of China was taken away by Nixon. They said, yeah, let's do business. We are not going to blockade you. We are not going to sanction you. You can produce and you can export to whoever you want, including us. We buy your shit. Go ahead. So that resulted into Chinese slowly not needing to be communist. Again, the emphasis here is Chinese slowly didn't need to stay communist. Again, communism is not something even the leaders of the country, even those who are ruling the country, who are governing the country, don't want to be communist. And for the simple reason that in a capitalist system, in a system that government is not running shit, if something goes wrong, if you have noticed recently that the government of the management of Uncle Sam has been blaming the oil companies for the price of oil, you know, and so in a not communist system, a system that is not communist, the government can always wash their hand and say it wasn't us, it was these private companies, these private motherfuckers, and point the people at the companies and tell the people this is their fault, they fucked up, anything bad that happens. So the government actually doesn't, and no government around the world doesn't want to be communist because it's too much responsibility. Believe me, Kim Jong-un, if he could have not been communist in North Korea, he wouldn't want to be a communist, because every issue, every problem is straight government's fault. When the government is running everything, they can say all the problems is the government's fault, because they're actually running shit. So the governments actually don't want to be in that position. They want to govern, they don't want to run shit, because then everything that falls apart is their fault. So my point is this: communism is not something that, you know, even the ruling people want to adapt. So when the Chinese were given a go ahead that okay, you're not under sanction, you're not under embargo, we're not gonna blockade you, you can produce and sell and purchase whatever you need and sell whatever you have excess of. It took a couple of decades, and not only, first of all, after a few decades there was no more communist levers in place, communism mechanism in place. Slowly, the government started taking away the communist levers, the communist mechanisms in each sector of the society, until everything started, until you can no longer call China a communist system, because the government doesn't own shit. Just like United States, the government just, you know, issues loans, creates debt, it prints money. That's about what all they do, you know, control the system by controlling the finances, but let the people produce and let the people consume. So you see, under emergency condition, even the fucking British become communist, and a communist country like China, which started its origins of the Chinese communist system after a revolution, it started with a communist revolution, well, a nationalist revolution that had to turn communist because there was little resources to go around and they want to keep most of their people alive. So therefore rationing of the resources, therefore controlling the manufacturing, because nobody wants to produce when there's no profits to be made. Even that system was turned into a capitalist system, free markets, by not blockading them. By removing the blockades and sanctions and all of that, they're no longer communist. Never been, haven't been communist for 20, 30, 40, 50 years now. So this is my point. I needed to say these examples to prove my previous video, to tell you, my capitalist friends, that unless there is emergency situation, communism will not come about. Communism only takes place when there is emergency situation, and it starts by government trying to ration goods in order to keep most of their citizens alive. That's where communism starts. And when the government takes over distribution of goods by rationing goods, then that means price control. That means the government is not going to pay excessive prices to the producers. Producers are not going to be making any profits. In many cases, the producers willingly just give the keys to the government and say, I'm not going to do the job for free. If you're not going to let me make profits, you might as well take over the production as well. That's how communism takes place. And it's not something that any ruling party, any ruling people, any ruling group of people, any administrator wants to actually do. Communism is not something that they want to do. Communism levers is something that they have to do because the system is under emergency conditions. That is war, regular war, physical war, or economic war. That is blockades and sanctions. But unfortunately, my pink-skinned friends, your managers are racist. Your managers, pink-skinned managers, want to feel superior to other races, want to administer, want to influence, want to control other races on different parts of planet Earth. So they attack them either physically or economically. They blockade different natives of different parts of planet Earth. And this economic blockade, or even regular war, accompanied by economic blockade, or just economic blockade, is enough to force those countries, those nations, to adapt communist mechanisms. It's not that they want to be communists, it's because the pink-skins are blockading them, the pink-skin managers are blockading them, declaring war on them, they're declaring regular war on them, declaring economic war on them, blockading them, sanctioning them, preventing them from doing any kind of business. Why? Usually it's because the natives who are not pink-skins, they don't want to relinquish independence. Usually that's the cause. Not usually, always that's the cause. Always that's the cause. That's the natives who resist being subdued by the pink-skin managers are looked upon as enemies, opponents, adversaries who should be punished because they don't want to submit. That's the key, submit. The pink-skinned managers of the planet want submission from other races, whether they're black areas of this world, brown areas of this world, yellow skin areas of this world, or red skin areas of this world. They want total submission from other races. If these other races do not submit, they are declared as enemy. And physical war or economic war is applied against them, which forces them to become communist. Again, rationing of the goods in order to keep most people alive. So it's not, again, we have to go over this. The pink-skin managers, they come up with all these pretexts. We are attacking them because they're savages and we are civilized and we are going to bring civility to them. Even if it means we have to kill every last one of them, we will kill them to make the land civilized, I guess. It's not about Christianity. We are attacking them because we have this responsibility to bring Christianity to them. Nope, it's not that either. It's sort of like we are gonna make that land Christian, even if we have to kill every last one of the natives. So it's not that either. It's not communism. The pink-skin managers are not fighting the natives of different parts of the planet because of communism. Because as we just went over it, communism is a mechanism that the locals have to adapt after they have been attacked by the pink-skins, either physically or economically. So it's not that either. They're not fighting communism either. And this recently, it's like we have to spread democracy and we have to, fight terrorism. Well, terrorists, they're shitheads. If you leave them alone in their shitty land, in the shitty place, and you stay in your home and they stay in their home, there is no terrorism. Terrorism only happens if you take over their land and they don't like it, so they attack you. This happens even in the fucking ant world. You cannot attack an ant colony and expect not the ants to sit back and, relax. So, again, it has to be, terrorism is a reaction. Folks, terrorism is a reaction to an external force. If the external force is powerful and wants to subdue the natives of any land. Now we are talking about Algeria. For decades and decades, the French had Algeria as their colony. I have to set examples of these countries I wouldn't be accused of anything. So I have to set an example of far away, which can be applied to any kind of pink skin, non-pink skin interaction. The French for many decades had colonized Algeria, had troops there, were fighting the locals, and the locals were resisting. They don't want to be subdued by the pink skin. Algeria being, for those of you who your educational system has failed you, Algeria is in northern Africa and France is in southern Europe, and they're very close. But one is the French are pink skins and the Algerians are brown skins. So for many decades, these from northern hemisphere, the French southern Europeans attacked the northern Africans and tried to colonize, influence, control Algeria. Just like they did many other places in Africa and Asia. And what happened? Any Algerian who was, who decided that no, they don't want to be subdued by the pink skins from the north, were tagged as terrorists. Algerian terrorists. It was like, what the fuck? So they should bend over and take it up the ass if they don't want to be, called as terrorists. So again, these are all pretexts, fighting the savages, fighting the non-Christians, fighting them against communism, fighting against terrorists, fighting for democracy. We have to deliver democracy to them. It's our duty to deliver democracy to them. All of them are pretexts. It's not about civility, it's not about Christianity, it's not about capitalism, it's not about democracy, it's not about terrorism. These are all pretexts. To what? To colonialism. To the pink skins with advanced militaries, advanced war equipment, subduing the natives of different parts of this planet. End of story. Subduing the natives. And these reasons that they provide is just, for public relations. Really, you think Jesus Christ, the peacemaker, would actually, agree with we have to go and bring them Christianity, kill them, and take over their land in the name of Christianity? Not really, but for 2, 3, 4, 500 years of recent European history, one of the main reasons that the people who were governing Europe were giving to their citizens, one of the main reasons why we should colonize North America, and why we should colonize South America, why we should colonize Australia, why we should colonize Africa, one of the main reasons they were giving was that, yeah, we have to go spread Christianity. It's our, our duty. Just like they say it's our duty to go and spread democracy, they used to say it's our duty to go and spread Christianity. Just like they said it's our duty to go and spread capitalism and resist communism and fight communism. No, they were fighting the locals. The locals had to adapt communist mechanisms in order to stay alive, in order to resist being taken over by the pinkskins or the pinkskin managers. And my common pinkskin folks, those pinkskins who are not in a position of management of society, and you're just average folks, you're just being played. They use you as cannon fodder to fight other races. They're using, your managers have been using you for a couple of thousand years now, have been misleading you that you're on the right side, even if you, a pinkskin, is on the black skin land and fighting the black natives for some reason or other. Christianity, capitalism, everything and anything. They just want to move you, manipulate you, in order to get your agreement to go and fight the locals on the other side of the planet. Now, whatever story they have to come up with, they will come up with to see what moves you, how you can be manipulated, what is the flavor of the day. Is it religion is the flavor of the day, or is it form of economy that they can scare you? They can scare you. Can they scare you with communism and make that as a lever in order to move the common pinkskins to invade other natives of this planet? Whatever it is, whatever it takes to move you, to stimulate you, in order to even at such times as even if you've heard of the Gulf of Tonkin, is that in which they just made up a fictitious attack by the local Vietnamese to start a war with the natives on the other side of the planet. Sort of like, okay, they attacked our patrol boats. There was no attack. And then sort of like one smart people would ask, why was your patrol boat a pink-skin patrol boat was doing in the yellow skin waters? What were they doing there in the first place? Isn't it because of colonialism? Isn't it because you feel it's your right that this is a pink-skin planet and other races are expandable? Other races have to submit? That's all, folks. That's all it's about. It's about submission. It's about the pink-skin managers who feel that other races have to submit, and they use their own pink-skin common folks in order to force other races to submit. So the real racism starts at London, in the British Palace, in the corridors of power in France and in Germany. Less in Germany, more in London. Less in Germany, more in France. Because if you look at it, the French and the British have had the French, the British, and the Spanish have had the most number of colonies on this planet. The French and the British have had the most colonies on this planet. And right now, the British is the only country that has put themselves in bed with Uncle Sam's managers, and they have refused to submit or relinquish control over their colonies with the help of Uncle Sam's managers. So it's all about forcing different races to submit to the British, to the pink-skinned ruling class of the planet. Yes, sometimes this pink-skinned ruling class uses brown and black skin as instruments, as functionaries. Yes, you black skin come and you become the leader of our, army. Yeah, but you're still taking orders from the pink skin. You're still fighting for the benefit of the pink skin. Even the British Home Secretary, that is a brown skin from South Asia, who have been born in England, but still she's an instrument. She's a brown skin, but she kisses the Queen's ring. Basically fighting on behalf of establishing, continuing control of the British over half the planet, all of the planet if they could. It's like we should not mix up. We should not say that functionaries are the same as the ruling class. No, they're functionaries, people who take orders, and then there are, the ruling class who actually own the fucking society, give the orders. That would be, the wealthy of the society, the lords. In case of the feudalist England, that would be the lords and the barons and the king and the queen. And in case of Uncle Sam's land, a few rich people, politicians, who are in admiration of the fucking British. Mrs. Clinton recently received multiple honorary doctorate degrees from the British institutions, and sort of like then you wonder what would have people said if multiple higher education institutions of Russia would have given honorary degrees to Mr. Trump. Sort of like everybody would be going out of their mind that, wow, why would they're trying to influence, the Russians are trying to influence Trump by giving him, honorary doctorate degrees, but Clinton receiving, honorary doctorate degrees from British institution, that's something to, brag about. Why? Because on their colonial quest, the British have found it profitable to get in bed with Uncle Sam's managers. And unfortunately, Uncle Sam's managers have agreed to get in bed with the British and their colonialist ideas. And therefore, a lot of pink skins are being used as cannon fodder. Just like the British used their common folks as cannon fodder, those British that could not be sent, that weren't sent to Australia and Americas to those poor British, poor commoners who the British could not get rid of by sending them to faraway lands, are used as cannon fodders to win British wars against the natives of different parts of this planet. for the benefit of the British ruling class. And now for many decades now, for almost a century now, the British have been convincing the Uncle Sam's ruling class to follow suit. Because it's all about subduing the locals, the local races, and selling it as we are there to bring Christianity, we are there to bring civility, we are there, something that sounds good, selling it as something that sounds good. We are there to bring capitalism, fight communism,